Hi, friends. Thank you for tuning in to the Concussion Coach podcast. I'm Bethany Lewis, the Concussion Coach. I'm a neurological occupational therapist and certified life coach, and I specialize in guiding people through their concussion recovery journey. I am passionate about helping people understand their injury, speed up their recovery, and reclaim control over their life post-concussion. The purpose of this podcast is to help increase awareness of concussions and the impact they can have on a person's life, and to bring hope to people who have suffered a concussion and those who love them. I firmly believe that sharing stories and knowledge about concussions will bring important light and understanding to this misunderstood and often invisible injury. The information in this podcast is meant to bring that awareness and hope and is not meant as medical advice. The opinions shared are those of the interviewees and my own. If you are suffering with lingering concussion symptoms, I have created a concussion coaching program specifically for you. I will be your mentor to guide you through your recovery journey, offering help with understanding and managing your symptoms, setting achievable goals, and learning how to manage your own thoughts and nervous system in order to get control over your life again. If this program sounds like something that would help you or someone you love, sign up for a free consultation. In the consultation, you'll get valuable information and resources and gain hope for your future. Sign up for your free consultation at the link in the show notes or at my website, www.theconcussioncoach.com. Hi, friends. Welcome back to the Concussion Coach podcast. I am excited today to interview my guest, Liz Rooney. Liz is a multiple traumatic brain injury survivor and chronic illness warrior who is determined to reach her full healing potential and has devoted her life to helping others do the same. God has supernaturally healed her in many ways, but has also shown her how to use the best of nature and the best of science to heal naturally as well. Liz has been able to shatter every prognosis, amaze her doctors, and gain her life back for the glory of God. Her miraculous healing journey has been full of breakthroughs, setbacks, and learning many lessons along the way, gaining wisdom and insight through the years that she now passes along to others. Liz currently resides in northern Wisconsin with her husband and 2 children. She is the founder of Unfading, a nonprofit organization to support those affected by chronic illnesses, brain traumas, and neurological challenges of any kind. Liz believes that not only does God heal supernaturally, but that we were also created with the powerful ability to heal through proper nutrition, neuroplasticity, and cell regeneration. Unfading provides applied research, coaching, teaching, and ministry to support healing warriors on their own individual journeys using a full spirit, soul, and body approach. So I love that intro. I'm so excited to hear your story. I like the things that I've seen on Instagram that you've posted have been very inspiring and really just profound. So I'm very excited to have you here today. Thanks so much for being here, Liz.
Thank you for having me. This is really awesome, Bethany. I'm so glad that we met.
Me too. I'm so excited. So your story is really interesting. I watched, you have a video on your website that kind of summarizes it. It's really well done video. Yeah, it's a unique and interesting story because it's not like one specific incident. You had an accident, you knew you had a brain injury, and then, continued on. But it sounds like, there was a lot of injuries, a lot of things. And anyway, I would love you to share your story. Tell us about the injuries and how you came about to understanding like what it was that you were dealing with.
Yeah, absolutely. It is kind of unique in that way. Is like I lived most of my life with a traumatic brain injury and didn't even know it, honestly. And it was just a series of accidents. So when I was 16 months old, I fell through the railing of a staircase, about a story. So I don't really know what it's like to not live with traumatic brain injury. And also there was like 7 car accidents that I did not cause, but I was part of. And since the age of 10, I had a choking incident at 12 where I passed out and was resuscitated. And it was just like, thing after thing happened. And not all of my symptoms were necessarily what you would think was like just a brain injury related. People think of brain injury, they think of like, okay, headaches, vision changes, that kind of thing. And for me, it looked like, I was diagnosed with narcolepsy or digestive issues, like my stomach stopped digesting food properly. And so it was a lot of different things, weird neurological symptoms that came and went. It looked like fibromyalgia, chronic pain. It looked like autoimmune disorder in a lot of ways. So I was going to different doctors trying to figure out like, what is wrong with me? Like, I am 25 years old and I'm at the height of like, I just graduated college. I just started in my career and I can't get out of bed. I was sleeping for like 15 hours straight. I couldn't even get up to go to the bathroom. My husband would like pick me up out of bed because I would wake up paralyzed, and he would like shake my arms and legs to try to get them to move so that I could just get up to go to work 3 hours late again. Like I didn't know what was going on. I went to a gastroenterologist because, why am I throwing up things I ate 2 days ago? I was just like trying to figure out what's going on in my body. And it seemed like every system was just kind of going haywire.
Mm.
And throughout the different accidents that I was in, because they were kind of years apart, it would bring on a whole new set of symptoms. So it just looked like I was chronically ill, but didn't know why.
So when you mentioned that when you were 12, you had an incident where you passed out, like, were you dealing with symptoms from the choking, but were you dealing with symptoms from that time on, or was it like they like built up, or they just randomly showed up? How did they come about?
Well, there was a lot of things I didn't really connect. So until I went and looked at my old school records, I didn't realize that like I had started maybe problems with my writing after a car accident when I was 10 years old. But I never really connected it, that I would start writing the wrong letters, or my reading comprehension went down. And, I was always like able to kind of make up for stuff. I was just a very competitive young person, and I was like, a decent student. And so I would find ways to compensate, rather than reading the whole book, I would just read the cliff notes and I would just act like I know what I'm talking about, and rather than paying attention in math class, I would just look at the first couple problems, figure out how to do the math assignment, and go from there. So I didn't have to really comprehend the reading or the verbal processing of my teacher. So there was a lot of things I noticed looking back. But when you're a young person and you have so many different head injuries, I was also a gymnast. I competed at a pretty high level in that. And so there was multiple times where I fell on my head there. So it just got to a point where when I was older, I noticed these things more, and also it just was piled on top of each other. So every head injury created new challenges and new problems. And it's basically like by the time I was 25 years old, my brain was just like not just healing on its own as well. You know what I'm saying? Like your brain will adjust and change after head injuries, but then it just seemed like I was just getting worse and worse. And so I didn't have any relief. And that's when I really started to seek out, like, what is wrong with me? Why am I so ill?
It's so interesting to hear how amazing, like, but human, like the brain is like it compensated. You were able to figure out ways to work around and still be very successful in lots of things. Like, it's pretty impressive. And you're right, the brain does figure out other ways to accomplish it. But it does have, there are effects of doing that. It has more fatigue. It takes away from the systems that would normally be doing the things that, anyway, it's challenging, but amazingly possible and really, really impressive. But sounds like at around 25, your brain was like, okay, we're done. So that's, so fascinating. And also an interesting point that the different symptoms came along and you didn't necessarily associate them. And I think that's something that happens a lot. Like you said, you were living with brain injury and didn't even know it. I think that that's very common. People don't realize that their brain has been compensating and is now having all these issues, and it could be related to something in the past. So that's, I think, a really important point to bring out as well. Yeah,
absolutely. People that I just am connected with many times, they don't know they have a brain injury either. And they've reached out to me because they're chronically ill and they're tired of being sick and tired, and they're looking for, ways to get better. And a lot of times that can happen when we find the root cause. So I'll ask them some questions about, what was your childhood like, or when did these symptoms start? Did you move into a new house? Did you have any motor vehicle accidents? Were you in athletics? And I'll ask them a lot of different questions, because it can be a brain injury from concussion that went overlooked. Put it this way, I was hit by a car. My head smashed through the windshield of the car. And she stopped. I rolled off the car onto the pavement, and I go to the emergency room, and they're more concerned about checking for any internal bleeding. And they stitched up my back, which was a huge gash from the windshield, and all this hair was shaved off and everything, right? So you see that I have a visible injury on my head. Did they mention anything about concussion? No. This was 2003.
No.
Right.
Wow.
So in the months following, I am a freshman in college. I gained 40 pounds. I become very depressed. I thought I was just homesick. I thought maybe I was just struggling emotionally. there were a lot of issues that happened at this time. I didn't know I had a head injury from an accident where I was literally hit by a car in the crosswalk.
Oh my gosh.
There
Yeah.
was no, hey, look out for these symptoms. At first, I thought it was because of the pain medication they put me on post-injury. And, I would just cry and cry and cry. And my mom was like, Elizabeth, we need to get you off of that medication. But it didn't resolve these other issues that were happening. And so then it wasn't until hindsight, my memory loss before and after these accidents too made it even more confusing. Like, I don't remember my high school graduation. I don't remember a lot of things that people supposedly do. And I didn't realize I didn't remember it until my brain injury doctor asked me, like, do you remember these things? And I was like, oh, I guess I don't.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Okay. So I have so many questions, but I want to hear how you found your brain injury doc and like the next progress of the story, like what you started looking into. But before we do that, I want to ask you, you mentioned when you're talking to people and asking them about, childhood events and things that happened. I'm curious about why moving into a new house is a question on that list.
Oh yeah. I was going to explain that one and I kind of forgot.
You're good.
So, we can also have traumatic brain injury symptoms and chronic illness from toxicity. So some people will not realize, but that brand new carpeting that they got could be very toxic for their health and could be causing symptoms in their brain. If they're moving out to the country and, even there's awareness needs to be of like Lyme disease or, different things that can cause brain injury symptoms, or which to me, chronic illness is a brain injury symptom in many ways. So moving into a house, maybe there's mold exposure, or, there's things that people discover like, oh my goodness, that's exactly when it happened, And there can be also emotional things and spiritual things connected to a different location, living in a new house that could be addressed as well. But it can be very complicated. But when we're guided by the Lord and we're listening to his voice and we're praying about it and we're asking him for guidance, then he really does answer us and help us to find the root cause of what's going on so he can heal us.
I love that. I love that perspective. And I think that's absolutely true. That's been my experience as well. He's the master healer. And so he wants us to find that healing and can guide and direct our journeys and knowledge and exploration and all of that. So I think that's beautiful. And I definitely want to touch more on that again too, like bring that in as much as it applies in these questions. But go ahead and like on your journey, I assume you felt led in that as well, but where did you go from your husband having to pick you up out of the bed because you were paralyzed for the moment? Like what else? What happened from there?
Yeah, so I was going to different doctors, like neurologists and specialists, and I had a neurologist that just did a sleep test with me and said I had narcolepsy. I would always have it. I was just born with it, and I just knew better. I was like, no, he's like, yeah, it's just manifesting itself now in your life, and this is just what happens, So I started to research narcolepsy, and I researched how a lot of times people get narcolepsy after taking a certain medical thing. I don't know if you want me to say the V word, but sometimes that happens. And I read some studies about that. And then I read that some colleges thought that narcolepsy was an autoimmune issue. And so I just started to kind of look at those kind of things. And I just didn't believe I was just born this way. I should just take these meds and cope the rest of my life. Like I knew something happened and the Lord wanted to heal me from it. So I did take the medicine that he gave me because I was so desperate to just try to keep my job and stay afloat in life. And so I tried all these different medications. But what happened to me personally was I would take one medication and it would cause issues. And then it would lead me to take another medication that he wrote a script for. And then I would have more issues from that. And then before I knew it, I didn't even know what my baseline was anymore because it didn't feel like me. And I had so many different side effects from the meds. And then one day I had this horrible reaction because they had changed the brand of my prescription. And I remember sitting there at work, I was it was it was pretty horrible. I just had this train wreck of a headache, and I just could not function at all. And then they told me that I was going to have to wait to see my doctor till like Monday when he was in the office, or for them to change anything. And so I just decided that weekend I was going to stop all the medications, and I safely weaned myself off of them, and I kind of just detoxed from all of that. And I started to look more into natural means of healing and health. And so I was like, okay, well, I have these symptoms. What are some things that I can take, like maybe herbs or supplements, or how can I change my diet? So I was already kind of like on this direction of, I don't want to do conventional medicine anymore. They're just labeling me and they're just drugging me. And so I was a little bit discouraged about that. And so I started to do a lot of research online, and I was up all night long. My sleep schedule was so messed up at this time. I would sleep from like 8 a.m. until like 5 p.m. And then I was just up all night. And if I would lay in bed, I'd literally stare at the ceiling. So people that haven't struggled with insomnia or narcolepsy symptoms, like, it's very hard for them to understand that you can literally lay awake for 8 hours all night long and not get any sleep. But what I would do instead of wasting that time is I would research. I would research about health and nutrition and what I could do to help my body just be more likely to heal from whatever illness it was. And I came across some like testing online. And so I was like, oh, this is interesting. And I did this amino acids test, right? And it was just way off. Like, all of the stuff that would be like almost like tranquilizing me, like my brain, like my GABA, and there was just a bunch of things. It's so long ago I can barely remember what all was on there. But it was just, they were through the roof. So I was like, no wonder why I feel this way. You know, all of these amino acids are just way off. But nobody could interpret it for me. So I just started to look into what is the word? Functional medicine. So I found a doctor she was an internal medicine doctor. She was a regular MD, but she was very open-minded to other things. And when she couldn't figure out what was going on, she wasn't like the other doctors where they were just like, okay, either this is all in your head, or, you know, you just are in denial that you have these diseases, you know. Mm-hmm. And she was like, okay, there's this doctor, and he figures out like the weirdest stuff, you know. He was a standard medical doctor, and then he got sick himself, and then nobody could help him in standard medical care. So then he kind of went into functional medicine because he found this cure, like that was just not what you would have thought. So I go see him, and he does this test. This is the first time a doctor actually took my heart rate and blood pressure sitting down and standing up. And he did this neurotransmitter test. And I mean, at this point, my serotonin level was like not even like existent. Like, I still have the copy of this test. He was looking at me, and he looked at the test, and he was like, I don't even know how you're functioning right now. Like, I have no idea how you can even be here with the will to want to get better. This is amazing. He was like, this is a miracle. So anyways, he did all this testing. And then the next time I went to go see him, he slid me this paper, and it was like, rate your symptoms before and after your head injury. And I was like, head injury? I was like, oh, well, I guess there was that time that I got hit by a car and my head smashed through the windshield. And I did hear that I fell like a story when I was a baby, and I did have a lot of like, you know, times where I fell on my head in gymnastics, and I was hit by a drunk driver, in 2010, and I guess I was in like 7 car accidents that I just, you know, since the age of 10 I didn't cause, and it was just, I just started naming all these things, and he was like, what?
I love it. That's so funny.
And it was like, oh my goodness, like, it was just this moment of, I finally know what's wrong with me. Yes. He had a lot, I lived in Virginia Beach at the time, so he had a lot of patients who were veterans. So they had been a part of a lot of like IED explosions and different things like that caused concussion that they didn't realize it caused concussion. Mm-hmm. So he was familiar with somebody who's living through this chronic illness. Every system in your body is just going nuts and shutting down on you, and them not knowing that it was tied to all of these concussions. So he immediately was ready with, okay, here's what you can do. They have these neuroplasticity-based brain treatment centers you can go to. You can do hyperbaric oxygen therapy, which we have right down the hall. He's just like telling me all these different things. And I was so thankful that the Lord had him and me connect, and be able to learn from him. And I was so thankful that I was also diagnosed by someone who believed I could heal, who believed in neuroplasticity, because there wasn't this doom and gloom, you just have to cope the rest of your life. And he was like, hey, go research. He took me to brainline.org, right? And I could see all of these awesome testimonies of people who were using neuroplasticity to heal their brain. And it gave me hope. So that was a really awesome experience, because not only did I know what I was fighting, but I also had the tools right away to be able to fight it.
Oh my gosh, I love that so much. I love that you said that you were diagnosed by someone who believed you could heal. That really does make all the difference. It does, because if you're told this is your new normal, deal with it, like good luck, figure it out, you're going to get used to it. Like if you believe that, then you're not motivated to go and try something else. So someone who's like, no, you can heal from this, neuroplasticity is a thing, that just does give so much hope, which I'm all about hope. And I love that Hope Unfading is your organization. Like hope is the motivator, right? Like if you have hope that there is possible goodness and like in your future, then you'll work towards that. And that's huge. I'm not familiar with brainline.org. Tell me a little bit more about that.
They just had awesome articles and research on healing the brain. I honestly haven't been on it in a while, but oddly enough, it was really cool because someone at a local news station in Virginia Beach got a hold of my story. I think I was recognized at a women's conference for all the things I'd been through. And so she did a story on me on the news station out there, and Brainline got a hold of that and posted it on their social media. And I remember seeing that and going, wow, isn't that cool? That's full circle. Like that's where I first was led to start learning about, healing the brain. And now they're featuring my story because I'm healing my brain.
I love it. That is really, really cool. That is beautiful. And yeah, we'll link to that in the show notes. But it sounds like prior to this, you didn't know a lot about brain injury, or you hadn't even connected that was what it was. So how did you move forward next? Like what did you try? What was helpful?
Yeah. Well, I went to a neuroplasticity-based brain treatment center for a 2-week stay. So it was 5 days a week of intensive brain treatment. And yes, it was very expensive and no, insurance did not cover it. I think maybe when we submitted stuff later on, they did help with a little bit, which was a blessing. But we sold my car in order for me to be able to go, because at this point I hadn't been working in a few years. I didn't know what was wrong. So I really didn't have a basis to like go on disability, because I didn't really have like a fullness of what it was. And I really, because of pride, I didn't want to go on there as well. And that was a whole struggle kind of in itself. And so we sold my car to be able to go. And oddly enough, like they had given me a discount because of our financial situation, because of me not being able to work for years and things like that. And the discount that they offered me was exactly what we were able to sell my car for. And it was just one of the ways, I mean, there's so many stories I have of this, but it was just one of the ways that the Lord provided supernaturally for us exactly the amount that we needed. And so I knew, okay, this is his will, and, this is where I should go. So I had a lot of great results there. Honestly, that is what I would say healed or changed my narcolepsy symptoms. So I was able to actually see on my brain map the reason why I was falling asleep all day is because in a well-lit room at noon in the middle of the day, my brain was like just consumed with delta waves, your deep sleep waves. And so it was helpful for me to be able to see on a screen what my brain looked like. This was the first time that they actually had testing besides my functional medicine doctor. But, I had gone through years of going to different doctors and they're like, yeah, this is going on, but we don't know why. And so finally I could see my brain on a screen, or like how my eyes were not working well together, or, and all of these tests explained what was going on. And for the first time, I was talking to somebody who understood and could tell me why all of this stuff was happening to me. So I saw so many results with that. There was, however, like a little bit of a setback with that. It is the intensive brain training of like 5 days a week for 2 weeks straight, and the amount of neurofeedback that I did and things like that. It kind of brought me from the deep sleep side to like almost the higher frequency, like beta gamma side. So it helped me in a lot of ways. But then I also had a whole different kind of set of symptoms. And this is where I learned that there can be some things that are very helpful when it comes to neuroplasticity, but there can also be some setbacks where you're like, okay, that didn't really work. Let's readjust. Or I did way too much too soon. So I have to learn I'm very sensitive with this, and we don't want to do that next time. So that was kind of my first rude awakening with that. So after that time, my symptoms changed and I was able to do a lot more things. I had a lot more energy. I wasn't cooped up in my house all the time. But now I also didn't have as much protection in my brain from sensory overload. So I went from like, I think that's why my brain, it was like a protective mechanism of basically putting me to sleep to avoid all of the sensory overload. And so at this time, I had different symptoms where I struggled with sensory processing a lot.
Super interesting. Did you recognize it was sensory processing issues like right away? Was it pretty, or was it some time to figure that out?
No, I had to learn, okay, what's going on? Because anxiety, like the anxiety in my brain was so strong that if there was a ceiling fan above me, I would cry. So it was a mix of this sudden huge change in my brain. And then me, because I'm this personality where I'm like, okay, if you give me an inch, I'm going to take a mile and I'm going to start a business because now I can work again and I'm excited. So it was this gradual thing over the next year of, okay, I have these little symptoms, but I can get through them. But then I became kind of almost a workaholic and my business grew very quickly. We had a studio in my home and I was teaching fashion design and sewing, and it was in large demand where I was. And so it grew very rapidly and I was doing a lot of it. And by the end of the year, I could barely function because the anxiety in my brain was so strong, and it reduced my processing speed a lot, and it just brought on other issues. I couldn't go into a restaurant to order food because the sound was so overwhelming that I couldn't even answer the server when they asked me what I wanted. And so my husband really helped with a lot of that because he would see that I was being overwhelmed before I realized it. And he would just watch my face, it would change, or I would like, just stop functioning and I would just kind of shut down. And then he would be like, okay, what is it? Is it that white noise machine in the office? Is the fluorescent lighting? Or, what is causing this breakdown? And he would help like remove me from the situation or remove the problem, because he was just so, intuitive about that, which I really appreciate.
Yeah, that's, I think, a beautiful point to bring out, that sometimes the person dealing with it doesn't even recognize what's going on. And that can be a role that the caregivers and loving, like the support network, can offer. Is like, oh, hey, I'm noticing this. Let's see what we can do about it. I think that's really beautiful. I'm so glad you had that in your life. That is such a blessing. I mean, I'm curious, I've been meaning to ask you this. What did you study in college? What was your background?
Fashion design and marketing.
Okay. So this makes sense that you started this business. When you did that program and you were like, oh my gosh, I'm so much better. Did you, again, sounds like these other symptoms came on, you didn't necessarily recognize, like, did you see that was still part of, you were still dealing with brain injury stuff? Or were you like, hey, I'm healed, I'm going to do all the things now?
At first I was like, hey, I'm healed. And then it just was too much. It was too much, too fast. And I crashed by the end of the year. And then I went back to the brain center and they were like, what has happened to you? So
you went back to the same place.
Yes, I went back to the same place. And then it was just this, realization of I'm not out of the woods. I just wanted this quick fix, a couple weeks at a brain center, I'm good to go. And it was this realization of I need to take time to really heal. And the Lord just, led me to just give up my business and we just tried to reduce our expenses in any way that we could. And we just believed the Lord that he was going to provide for all the things that we needed to do and pay for as it came to like treatment and things like that. And I just, when I was feeling better, like when I first left the brain center and I was feeling better, I kind of like stopped being so concerned about nutrition and gut health and, you know, taking care of myself that way. It's like I just kind of went back to my normal, like usual life. Like, okay, I'm good now. And I realized that that wasn't a good move either. So I got back into researching all that I could. And I think this is the point where I started Hope Unfading. I realized, you know, okay, I wanted to have my dream again of, you know, fashion design and all these things. And it seemed like the Lord was giving me that, but then he just kind of let me crash and burn. I was like, no, actually, this is your purpose. You're going to help people through this and you're going to take time to heal yourself. So it was really sad. You know, I gave up my business and everything. But I just knew it was what the Lord wanted me to do. So this was when, you know, I went to Amen Center or Amen Clinics. Yeah, Amen Clinics. And I got SPECT imaging scans done, which the Lord supernaturally provided for as well, because that is not cheap. But then I got like kind of a baseline of what I could do. And I just continued my treatments and I did my therapies. I went to physical therapy, did vision therapy. I did transcranial magnetic stimulation. I got a Fisher-Wallace device, which was very helpful. There was a lot of things I just looked into that, you know, were very helpful for healing the brain. And I just did them as the Lord led me to them. And I started to see really awesome results. And it was great. By this time, I had a whole team of practitioners who knew my story. They knew my symptoms. They took me seriously. And a lot of them now were like, okay, Liz, I'm learning from you just as much as you're learning from me. Like, I look forward to you coming in because you are, you know, teaching me a lot about, you know, my practice. So they appreciated me and that's a far cry from when I would be sitting in the doctor's office and they're like, what's wrong with you? I'm like, this, and this. And they're like, well, do you think you're just paying attention to your symptoms too much? Or, you know, you're too complicated. So I'm going to have to just, you know, stop seeing you because I can't figure you out. And so I just started to post on social media more. I got connected with a lot of people in the brain injury community. And I just held on to this hope that the Lord was going to use my story and that I was going to heal. I didn't have kids at this time. And I wanted to someday. But at this point, we're talking multiple concussions over such a long period of time. My SPECT imaging scans showed that my brain was like that of an NFL football player or a war veteran. And so this is when the awareness of the movie like Concussion came out and the awareness of CTE was becoming real. And I went for a neurocognitive evaluation and found out I was in the first percentile for memory and processing speed and things like that. And I was diagnosed with mild cognitive impairment, which, you know, I was like, you call this mild? I'm struggling, you know? And then I went home and I researched it and I realized, oh, this is like a real thing. And this is like the beginning of Alzheimer's. And it's actually considered by some to be like stage 3 of 7 of Alzheimer's. And I was like, I think I was 30 years old at the time. And it's like, wow, okay, this could be scary. Lord, I need your help. Like, you know, you said that I'd be healed and I'm standing on that, but in the physical, this doesn't really look like it. So I need help. And so I just prayed like it depended on God and I worked like it depended on me. And the Lord did amazing, miraculous things. And one of those things was I was at church one day and we had like, you know, a couple thousand people at our church. We were kind of at like a mega church at this time. And a healing evangelist came and the Lord gave him a word about somebody in the midst of these couple thousand people that had over 5 car accidents. They were over 5 years ago. You're still having symptoms. It was like so specific that everyone who knew me like turned around and they're like, you better go up there, you know? And they prayed for me. And I thought, this is going to be my instant healing moment. It's all done. I'm all good, right? And I believed for it, you know? And I had the faith for it. But they prayed for me, and like the power of God touched me, but I still had symptoms after. So I was like, okay, now what's going on, Lord?
Mhm.
But right after that is when I was connected to a treatment called transcranial magnetic stimulation. And I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but it was probably the single most treatment that I had the most results with.
Tell us
And,
more. Yes.
and the only reason I had the most results with it was because they not only did the left side of my brain, but they decided, because I asked one day, do you ever do the right side? Because I always knew the right side of my brain is what struggled the most. And they said, well, no, because it's not FDA approved, but if you want to try it, we'll try it with you. And that had to have been God. And I believe it had to do with that prayer of when I was called up and the Lord was working supernaturally behind the scenes. And I believe that the Lord brings about our healing not only instantly sometimes, but he will make connections happen where awesome things happen and he can heal us naturally as well. So after they did the right side of my brain, I was like a whole different person. I remember going somewhere like that night and my friend was talking to me, but like normally I would just be like, oh, yay, hi, okay, yeah, yeah, I understand what you're saying. I had no idea what people were saying to me ever. And she was talking to me in a room where there was other people and other crowd noise. And I looked at her and I started crying, not because I was overwhelmed, but because I was hearing her. Actually, like I could make out the words that she was saying to me and I could understand them. And it slowed down my brain so much that a lot of my chronic pain was relieved. It was almost like I took a pain pill when I went. And it was because of this, activity of my brain that it balanced out.
Wow.
And so that was when I was like, oh my goodness, this is the best I've felt. And I can't even remember. And that's when we were like, oh, okay, well let's have a baby. Because I always wanted to be a mom and I mean, I believed I could be, but at the time it did not look like that was even a possibility to even take care of not only like, actually be pregnant, but take care of another human being. Yeah, right. I couldn't even get out of bed myself. And so I was doing so well. I got pregnant and my brain doctor was like, just so you know, sometimes people will have regression when they're pregnant if they've had traumatic brain injury. And I was like, nope, not me. Not going to have it. Nope, don't accept it. Well, during that pregnancy was probably when people on social media saw me posting a lot less and I was in bed a lot more and it was pretty hard. And I got through that, had amazing, beautiful baby girl, totally worth it. But now I actually did another round of transcranial magnetic stimulation while I was pregnant because I'd gotten so bad. I'm like, maybe this will help me. And I believe it did a little bit. But after I had my first baby, I was struggling so bad because there was something that happened and I now became allergic to barometric pressure change, which is very typical of brain injury. And a lot of people that have brain injury and PTSD, they will move to somewhere like Arizona because it's very level and barometric pressure. But I didn't realize how bad it was until like it was spring. And between my hormone changes and my immune system shift and my brain injury, every other day it felt like I was going to die. I was on the verge of anaphylaxis. Like I had this feeling of doom. And it was the worst postpartum anxiety like that I could even believe. So it was a very hard time. But this is where I had a friend who saw me at church and she's like, Liz, I saw your video, the video you watched on my website.
Mhm.
And she's like, did you ever think that this could be spiritual? All these accidents in your life? I mean, that's not really typical of someone to go through. And I was like, well, yeah, I just believe the enemy's afraid of, what I'm going to do. And maybe that was just an attack from him or whatever. So she said, okay, have you gone through deliverance? And I was like, deliver what? Like, they don't talk about that at my church. And so she kind of shared with me her testimony of deliverance and how the Lord spiritually delivered her from some stuff. And I was like so desperate desperate that I was like, yeah, what do you got? She sent me some prayers of like repentance and just breaking stuff. And it was really cool because it was the perfect timing. And the Lord delivered me spiritually of things. And in this time, he healed me supernaturally. And it was the first time that I wasn't like one step forward, two steps back, two steps forward, one step back. Like that's how my recovery, my healing journey always felt like. It was like, okay, now I'm just waiting for the next crash, And even my husband told my brain doctor, I just keep waiting for her to crash because she'd be doing really good and then she would just like crash and then we'd have to start back all over again. And I just keep waiting for that crash, but it's not happening. And so this is where it was like, the Lord healed me in 20 minutes, what would have taken 2 years of therapy to do. And it was like he said, I let you get this far with the perfect diet, all natural things, neuroplasticity-based treatments and therapies, and you've done a great job, and you've renewed your mind on the word, and you have taken care of your mind and changed your thought life, but now watch what I can do. And it was amazing. So my life has never been the same since then. And I've had another baby boy. That pregnancy was so much better. And I was able to do so many things. I was kind of in awe the whole time, like, wait, I'm pregnant and I can function? Wow, this is amazing. And my postpartum was just great. And so I've just been better and better and better. And it hasn't, I haven't had any setbacks. And I've been doing so much more than I just can't even believe all the things that I've been able to do.
That's amazing. That is amazing. And I appreciate, I've been like writing down all my questions. I have a lot of questions.
Sorry, that was really long. I just realized I just talked a lot.
No, it was so good. I'm so grateful to hear the story and hear how it's just really cool to see. And I think it's important for people to hear this and see it as well, that the journey is fraught. Like you move forward and you move backwards, you move forward and you're led to the thing that's going to help you at that moment. And then but that doesn't mean that all symptoms will go away forever. Like you have all these things. I was talking to somebody the other day who was, I think, kind of struggling with the setbacks, like just a lot. And I hear this all the time, is like, there's a lot of fear of the setbacks. Like I'm making all this progress. And then when I have a setback, it feels like all of the progress that I made has just, and all the victories that I won have been taken away from me. And like, that just like cut to my heart. But like how, if you wouldn't mind just sharing, like, how did that like be, I don't know, actually my friend that I was talking to, this client of mine, she was saying like, it's almost sometimes hard for her to hear these stories of like, here I was, and now I'm here, and all of it was worth it. And yeah, there were setbacks, but now here I am, like, she's like, I need to know, like, I almost want to hear how bad the setbacks are so that it's like validating, or just, just like to know that it's possible to go through it. And that, I don't know, what are your thoughts on that? Do you have any like suggestions to offer, or like hope to give, or like just be really raw about some of those setbacks? Because you have had a lot, like you found finally something that was helpful, but then it turned into all these other symptoms. And then you you found something else that was helpful, but then something else came. Like, it just sounds like you've had experience with setbacks. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember when I was pregnant with my daughter, Addie, and I just remember I was in bed again, just like every day, it seemed like. And at this time in pregnancy, especially, like my symptoms of postural orthotic tachycardia syndrome, POTS, which is typical of brain injury as well. That's why that functional medicine doctor tested my blood pressure and heart rate standing up and sitting down. He was familiar. And then I had a neurologist. I've learned from a lot of people, neurologists are not brain injury patients' favorite people all the time, because many times they will like tell you something and it's like, okay, that's not what my brain injury certified doctor said. But they were like, brain injury can't cause POTS. It's just only out of it. And it was just funny. But anyways, so I'm pregnant and I can barely get up the stairs, like in my house. And I just remember being like, Lord, is this how it's going to be forever now? Like when you're in that setback, like now looking back, it was such a short period of time. But when you're in that setback, it's like, is this going to be forever? And I just want to encourage you, if you're there, just cry out to God and be real with him. We have examples of that all throughout scripture, and he knows what you're going through. And he can comfort you in that time and encourage you. And I had to look to him for that hope, because it literally felt like, okay, I had this taste of healing, and now for what? And now I have to take care of a human being feeling like this? This is not fair. And I heard somebody preached in a message about when the Lord delivered Paul from the shipwreck, and then he was on land and he got bit by a snake. And the Lord saved him supernaturally from the poison of the snake. And the message was, the Lord didn't bring you this far to only bring you this far. He didn't bring you through this huge shipwreck in order for you to die from a snake bite. And that really impacted me, because I saw the whole kind of scope or the picture. And it's like, I then remembered the promises that I had from the Lord and the things that he showed me. And so I just held on to that through this time. And that really helped me a lot. I just had to hang on to the promises that I would be well, and that this was a season, and that my doctor said this regression could happen. I didn't want to hear it at the time, but then I have the hormones and everything like that. And I want to encourage anybody, especially going through pregnancy with brain injury, because this is the coolest thing ever. When you're pregnant, your brain shrinks and it regrows. Anyways, even a neurotypical person, our brains were made to shrink in pregnancy and then regrow in certain areas so that we can be better moms, so that we can take care of our children. So the parts of our brain that do with nurturing and things like that, and facial recognition, all that stuff. So I held on to that as well. Like, this is a really hard season, and I feel a regression in this pregnancy, and I'm struggling. But I stood on a promise that the Lord would heal me through pregnancy even, and that my brain would grow in the areas that I needed it to, and I would come out of this better than I was. And that happened in a lot of ways.
That's beautiful. And I thank you for sharing that, and that perspective that, I don't know, that was really real and raw. Thank you, because I think that it's important to recognize that when you're in it, and you don't know, like, looking back, you have that 2020 vision of like, okay, I saw how long that was, like, it's now over, and I know how long it lasted. Whereas when you're in it, that's the problem. You don't know how far out it's going to be. Is it going to be forever? Is it going to be a day? Is it going to be a month? Whatever, right? Like, so it's okay to feel all the feelings when you're in there, but to call out, to ask for that help from the divine source that can offer some, even if it's just a small little, like, a story to remember, an experience of somebody else that can help you, like, hold on to that so that you can get through that, and you will get through it. I think that's really beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. And especially, that's really interesting about pregnancy. And I was going to ask you, with the pregnancy, it sounds like it was both. I mean, was it typical? It was a hard pregnancy because of, like, the typical things, or did you have those, morning sickness, like all the normal hard things about pregnancy, with also an increase of the brain injury symptoms that you had been dealing with? Is that both?
Yeah. As far as my actual pregnancy went, it was, pretty typical. There wasn't anything like preeclampsia or anything like that. There was, like, concerns about blood pressure, like, towards the end, and then we realized it was probably just the anxiety. I got, like, white coat syndrome or something, but there wasn't any, like, severe complications pregnancy wise. But the symptoms, like the morning sickness, yes, that was horrible, because it was on top of already, feeling crummy from traumatic brain injury symptoms and things like that. And so my food aversions were just insane. Like, so there was just things where it was just like, on top of that. And then the POTS symptoms were, kind of a struggle. I couldn't stand up, like, when I was pregnant, because my heart rate would just go up to, like, 140, 150 right away. So there's, different kinds of things like that just made it harder. But as far as, like, the actual, pregnancy, like, it was pretty typical. And
amazing that you were, that the second pregnancy was so much better. That's really beautiful. I'm grateful for that for you.
Yeah. So hopefully that gives you hope if you're afraid to get pregnant again because you had a regression. Just keep on your healing journey and, try it again. It'll be And between that, I had that spiritual deliverance from the Lord. So that I believe, I attribute that all glory to God, because he did what I could never do. So.
And I think it's interesting. I think it could be hard and also really good to hear like the journey. It's in God's hands as far as when and how the healing happens, right? Like he's completely capable of making it happen. But I think that there's so much for us to learn, and like the struggle is part of the point of all of this, the whole life thing. And so, yeah, it can be hard to like have faith that healing is possible, but also recognize that this journey is, such a process. I don't know. It's
Absolutely. I would go forward for instant healing at like services, like altar calls. Like it was, I just believed this is going to happen. This is going to happen. But I remember being awake one night, go figure. I was always awake at night, but I was watching some videos of like miraculous healing and things like that. And there was these videos where some missionaries came and found this girl, and she had this large like tumor on her face, and she was actually dying from it. And so they actually connected with her, and they brought her to the United States, and she had surgery, things like that. And I saw in the comments, some people were giving glory to God, but some people were like, that wasn't God, that was the doctors, that was science, And so strongly, I heard the Lord say, I am going to use science to heal you, but I get the glory. And I held on to that. That was actually one of the promises I held on to through that pregnancy. That was so hard. And through the times where I just wanted it to be instant, I just wanted it to be done. But I held on to that because he said that he would use science. And it was that process, ups and downs. But he heals us a lot of times he heals us all the time in the way that's going to bring him the most glory. Mm-hmm. And if it was just an instant quick fix heal, I go down to the front, I get prayed for, everything's good, hunky-dory, I would not have been able to help all of the people that I've been able to help in the last, 10, 12, 15 years of my life, because he's brought me through so many seasons, the ups and the downs and the different symptoms. I feel like I can relate to most everyone who's had a brain injury, because there were times where I felt like this, and this person connects with it. There were times where I felt like this. There were times where I was able to explain to a parent how their child was struggling to pay attention or to put things together because they didn't understand. And so my history was, I was, summa cum laude graduate. I was captain of every team I was on. I was a state champion athlete. Things came easily to me, straight A student, right? And then I am brought to a place where I can't even get out of bed on my own. I can't even work the credit card machine at the store. I can't figure it out. And I am struggling to pay attention, and I don't understand what somebody's saying, and I can't read and understand what are these words on the page. It doesn't make sense to me. So I was able to tell these parents, I know what it's like to be you, and I also know what it's like to be them. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a lot of the power of my story is I went from, I was like kind of the tough girl, I used to arm wrestle the boys, and I would pole vault, and I went so high when I was pole vaulting in high school, they made me compete with the boys. So I was like, I'm so strong, and then I'm brought to a place where I would collapse on the floor for an hour at a time, and I couldn't even move. And it's like, wow, where's the strength and power there, right? So that humbled me a lot. And so I can understand how somebody would not really have a lot of empathy because things come so easily to them. But then I was brought to a place where I'm the one struggling. And now the Lord's given me a gift of being able to communicate that. Mm. And so that is a huge blessing. So I don't like when people say, oh, I'm sorry what happened to you, because I'm not sorry. I'm very thankful. I'm thankful because it's given me a purpose that I didn't even know that I had. I've been able to help people, and life isn't about me anymore. I was a very selfish person, and I was very self-centered and just, I don't know, kind of shallow. And the Lord has built so much character through all of these years where it wasn't easy, and my healing was taking too long, and I had another setback. And what he did in me, I would never want to go back to who I was before I had a traumatic brain injury, ever. And I'm so thankful because the Lord wants us to prosper and be in good health, even as our soul prospers. And He had a lot of things He wanted to do in my soul so that I would be ready for the purpose that He had for me at the end of it.
That's so, so beautiful. And it just, this image of like him, he's like carving out this depth of character that he's then filling with such goodness and beauty. And so I thank you for sharing that. And I would love for you to share with us how you help people today. Like what is Hope Unfading? What is it? What do you do with it? And how do you help people?
Oh, sure. So Hope Unfading is an organization that we started, and it is to help anybody that really is healing in any way. It's kind of branched out from just traumatic brain injury to then it was chronic illness. And then I was realizing that there's a lot of people struggling in a lot of ways. Maybe it's just anxiety or depression or, who actually is normal? What is normal? So anyone who is wanting to live in divine health. And my personal story happens to be from disability to divine health, but maybe yours is just, hey, I just am struggling with some auditory processing, or, I want my memory to be better, or I don't want to be controlled by anxiety anymore. So it's really reaching a wider span of people now. But I just basically have been coaching people since 2016. And even when I wasn't really doing a lot publicly, there were just ways that the Lord connected me with people. And so I have been either pregnant or nursing or both for the last 7 years, right? So I've had a lot going on like in the home. And for a while there, I wasn't doing a lot of things that were public on my page. But just recently, the Lord is just pressing it on my heart to, finish the book and get out there on social media again and do more public speaking events and things like that. So it's always been a coaching and support kind of organization. And I have resources on my website and just practical information for healing in your body, the physical side of it, in your soul, your mind, your emotions, and also in the spiritual side of it, becoming closer with the Lord and set free of things that may be hindering your healing in the first place. Because one of the things I wondered was, if it's the Lord's will for me to be healed, then why am I still sick? And so the Lord has taught me so much through that, of breaking off those hindrances to my healing.
That's amazing. I love that. And it sounds like do you have a team, or is it you? Or do people work with you individually? How does it work?
Basically just me and whoever kind of comes alongside. We have a little bit of a larger ministry now, our family ministry, and that has been part of what the Lord has, done through all of this. But Hope Unfading is kind of more specific about health and healing. And our other ministry, where we have more of a team, it is a little bit wider range. So
very cool. Very cool. Okay, so I wanted to ask you about, what are you still dealing with? I know you've had amazing healing happen. Are there still things that you struggle with, or how has it impacted you today?
Yeah, that's a really great question, because sometimes I wonder, okay, how do I present myself like to people? And I say healed, because even though there might be some nagging things, like I'm still working on, like my reading comprehension, or, my processing speed has increased like a ton. It's nowhere near first percentile. I think when I was pregnant with my daughter, it was like 18th percentile. And then like that was 6 years ago. And it's just like so much higher now. I haven't had it recently tested, and sometimes I'll, struggle a little bit with executive functioning or something, or, forget something once in a while. But I could get frustrated at that, and like, okay, I thought I was further along than I was. And then I look back and I'm like, when's the last day that I was in bed all day? I don't even remember. Probably when I was pregnant with my daughter. That was like 6 years ago. When was the last time, that I had this symptom or that symptom? Or, I have to bring myself to realize like how far I've come and how much healing has happened. And the only reason I'm really noticing these little annoying things is because I'm doing so much now. There's like so much I'm doing that I was never able to do before. And so I might notice, that I forgot to mail this package, but I'm actually able to mail a package now, so it's a big difference. And so I don't know what it's like to like live without a brain injury. Like I said, my first one was when I was a toddler, but I am doing the best I have ever done. And I still continue to pursue further healing, not as dramatically as I was. It's not my life. My life now is trying to help others in their healing journey, but I just get better and better all the time now. So it really has been amazing. So there's a couple little things, like I have gone to Dr. Zielinski and I've done like her brain healing glasses, and to kind of help with my reading comprehension. It's like, I feel like now it's just like add-ons, oh yeah, I should probably do interactive metronome, therapy, or, like that kind of stuff. That will help me a little bit more. But when you're just doing so well, sometimes it's like your focus can get on other things. So
Thank you for sharing that. I love this because it does show that there is hope for healing, like that it is possible to get to a point where, I did an interview recently where they quoted somebody at the clinic that I work at, and he had said, you will always have had a brain injury, but you can get to a point where you're like so much better. The healing does happen. And so, yeah,
that was my main motivation. Honestly, I didn't want to just help people get through brain injury. I didn't want them to just, say, okay, you can make it, you can survive. Like, I wanted people to know you can thrive, you can heal. There is healing available to you. And we serve an amazing God, and he loves to heal us. And so working with him, like, and his plan and his timing and his will, it is the best thing. And so I wanted to inspire people and give them hope that it doesn't have to be forever. Can't promise anything, thing to anybody specifically in their situation, but there's healing available. And if you team up with the Lord and you do what he wants you to do, and you really give him your life, I feel like I'm supposed to share this part. This was when I had a huge setback, when I had to give up my business. I was doing this therapy that was like really cool. I don't know if you've ever seen the float tanks, but it's like sensory deprivation. Yes. Time, that's what I really needed for my brain. And you're literally floating in the water. It's no light, no sound, and it's heaven for anybody who has sensory processing issues. But I remember just being in that float tank, and this was after everything crashed and burned. I had to give up my business, and I'm back at square one. And it was finally when I died to myself. They say as you become a Christian, like, that's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to die to yourself, be reborn again in Christ. But I really don't think I really understood what that meant until that moment, when I literally had nothing left. I didn't want to keep going. I didn't have children at this time yet. I didn't know if I could. I, just had this huge setback, and I'm in that float tank, and tears are just streaming down my face. And I was like, I've got nothing left. So either take me now or do something with my life, because otherwise I'm done. I give up. And it was like, that was what the Lord needed. And he's like, okay, now I can use you. And that's when I died to my dream, my fashion design dream. I died to that. I died to even like being healed. I was just like, okay, do what you want with whatever is left of my life, God, because obviously I've screwed it all up. And that was really the most pivotal moment in my journey, was when I truly said, okay, you tell me what to do, God, and I'll do it. And healing happened so much more quickly after that. So much more smoothly after that.
That's amazing. Thank you for sharing that. And I think it's, you even like, it was faster after that, but it was still up and down until the more like miraculous healing part too. So I think that's so beautiful and so important to trust, to give it to him and trust his timing and all of it. And then you can come to a point eventually. And again, if you're listening to this and you're not at this point yet, that's okay. But have hope that you can get to the point where you can, like Liz and so many other people that I've talked to, say, I'm grateful for this. Like, it's like, I wouldn't trade it. And that's just, it never ceases to amaze me and make me cry when I hear people say that, because this is like, I hear the hard, and it's amazing to see the good that God can make of these things. So thank you for sharing this. I just one more quick question here. What advice do you have? I remember seeing one of the things that I really loved that I saw on your Instagram was a clip of you in the gym lifting weights and then your husband behind you lifting the weights. Tell us about that, and tell us about how, like, advice you have for the support people in people's lives.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It kind of started out as a joke, and I was like, "Hey, this is funny," because he was kind of like working out behind me, and then I was like, and then I started writing, and I started crying, and I'm like writing the sappy post. I'm like, this wasn't supposed to be a sappy post, but it is, because I just so appreciate him, and I so appreciate caregivers because I could hide it from a lot of people. I could hide my struggle. I could stay in my house, and I did. I didn't tell a lot of people what I was going through for a lot of different reasons, but I couldn't hide it from my husband. And one of the things that my brain doctor at the brain treatment center said is he was just so amazed that the extent of the struggle that we had gone through with my injury and my sickness, that we were still together. And he said, there's so many people that come, and unfortunately, that's not the case. And I really appreciate that while not perfect, nobody's perfect, he stuck with me. And he didn't understand what I was going through, but he tried. And he did whatever he could. And there were times where, he had setbacks too. He felt like his wife was stolen from him and that God had failed him. And, why should I serve a God that would let this happen? So there were times where he struggled too, but we never fell on the same day. We could pick each other up. You know what I mean? We never gave up on the same day. And I would just say to those who are helping somebody out, whether it's a family member or a friend or a spouse, and they're struggling with chronic illness or traumatic brain injury or whatever it is, first of all, just know how valuable you are and how appreciated you are. And I would just say, if you're having a hard time understanding what it's like for them, because it's not you, you're trying from the outside, and I understand. Sometimes I tell people, just imagine that this person has a huge cast on their head at all times. Because sometimes we can forget when it's an invisible injury or an invisible chronic illness, what it's like for the person living it. And so he did his best, my husband did his best to understand what it was like. And I would have to communicate to him what it was like. For me, there were times where I would find a video. This is one thing where there's so much power in us sharing our story online, because I would find videos that other people would share, and I would show him and be like, see, that's how I feel, or that's what it's like. Somebody understands me. And there was so much power in that. But I just want to encourage caregivers too, that not only, for your brain injury survivors, it can get better. For caregivers, it can get better. Don't give up. Don't give up on the person you love, and, take what you need, take time to yourself and care for yourself too, because sometimes you can be caring for the other person so much that you forget, and sometimes people lose themselves in that. And so it's very powerful, and the Lord does amazing things when people are together, unified, and believing for something.
Thank you. That's an important message. I think, I appreciate that perspective, and always want to give a shout out to the caregivers because they're dealing with a brain injury as well, even though it wasn't theirs.
Sometimes it can be harder. As a mom, you understand. Is it harder for you to go through sickness, or is it harder when your kid is going through a sickness?
So much harder. So much harder when the kiddo's doing it. Like, oh my gosh, I could take this on me instead. Yes. Right. Yeah. So thank you for this. This is so beautiful. I really appreciate your story and all the things that you've learned through it and your faith in it and all of this. I feel like I could talk to you for a lot longer, but we
might have to have like parts or something.
Yes, we might need to do another one of these. There were so many things I was like, oh, I want to dive into that. But this is the overall story. So maybe we'll bring you back and have you dive in a little bit more with some of the other things. But if people are wanting to hear more from you, wanting to work with you, what can they do? How do they find you?
Yeah, absolutely. Our website is hopeunfading.com. And on social media, I'm just Hope Unfading with no spaces or anything like that. It's Hope and then the word Unfading. And I am on Instagram, Facebook, You will not catch me on TikTok because, first of all, I don't think that's good for your brain. And second of all, I don't understand it. It's just too much for me. But I am starting to do a lot more on YouTube. I'm going to be uploading a lot more videos on there because also Instagram can just be funny sometimes, and Facebook and the algorithm. And, I want to reach the right people. And so I'll be doing more on that as well. And look out for my book coming out this year. That is exciting. And
is it called Hope Unfading?
Hope Unfading, from disability to divine health. So
amazing. All right. Awesome.
Yes. And if you are interested in, an interview like this, or, I'm stepping out and doing a lot more public speaking things on many different topics, like you were just saying, I could dive deep into one thing, my story is so long, but sometimes it's just one specific point that needs to get across. I am open to doing that too. If somebody wants to just fill out the contact us on the website, I'll get back to them.
Perfect. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for sharing this light and goodness and sharing your story with us. I really, really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Bethany, for having me. It's been really cool. And it's so great to know you.
Yes, thank you. I'm so glad you listened in today. I hope you have gained some helpful insights and inspiration regarding dealing with and recovering from concussions. My goal is to create more awareness and education about concussions and the fact that there is so much that can be done to improve life after someone has had one. Help me spread the message by liking, commenting, rating, and subscribing to this podcast, and share it with others who would benefit from hearing it. There are more resources available on my website. And again, if you or someone you love would benefit from concussion coaching, sign up for a free consultation using the link in the show notes or at my website, www.theconcussioncoach.com. Thank you. See you next time, and take good care of that amazing brain of yours.